Bray Wyatt is reportedly in talks with WWE about a possible return to the company. Logan Paul versus Roman Reigns is now official for Crown Jewel for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. We have the ratings for this week's edition of SmackDown, plus a major corporate shakeup in WWE, and Eric from the Viking Raiders is out with an injury. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of WWE. So let's start off talking about Bray Wyatt and a possible return to WWE. He's been one of the names, hasn't he, that a lot of people have been talking about with all of these returns to WWE. We've seen the likes of Karrion Kross, Hit Row, Johnny Gargano, and others all return to WWE. Braun Strowman, the latest, possibly one of the biggest names to return to the company. And it looks like maybe the leader of the Wyatt family that Braun Strowman, of course, was so closely associated with, could be set to return to the company now that Triple H is in charge of not only talent relations but also creative with WWE. Now, ever since Paul Triple H Levesque took over as WWE's chief content officer, many popular faces who have been let go or left the company prior to Levesque's ascension have miraculously returned. Those names, as I mentioned, include the likes of Johnny Gargano, Braun Strowman, Karrion Kross, and several others. However, one name that many have been longing to see return to WWE since his release in July of last year is Bray Wyatt. Now, speaking of the subject of The Fiend, during a recent interview with Ariel Helwani of BT Sports, Triple H teased Wyatt's return, talking about what it was like to work with someone as creative as Wyatt is. Although we have yet to see Wyatt make his first appearance in over a year, since he's left WWE, he hasn't made any pro wrestling appearances. There had been rumors of talks of AEW, Impact Wrestling, possibly a startup pro wrestling company that I believe was owned or is going to be created by actor Freddie Prinze Jr. But we haven't seen any pro wrestling appearance from Bray Wyatt since his release. He's done a few cryptic teases on social media, but that's just about it. But according to Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, there have been increased talks about Wyatt returning to the WWE. And though the talks have stalled at one point, the Observer described Wyatt/WWE as, quote, not a dead issue. The report suggests that Wyatt will likely not be appearing in other companies as his asking price has been prohibitively too high. The Observer notes that during his time in WWE, Wyatt was being paid around the same amount as the likes of former UFC champion Ronda Rousey, 14-time world champion Randy Orton, and just one tier below Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, putting him among, quote, the highest paid pro wrestlers in the world. Now, Wyatt, as I mentioned, has yet to wrestle a match since the WrestleMania 37 defeat against Randy Orton, which, of course, I mentioned that defeat he lost in just under 6 minutes after suffering a betrayal by Alexa Bliss, a storyline that they never paid off. He was then off television for several months. We didn't really know why, whether was it an injury, was it an illness, was it something else, was it storyline, we never really knew. Now, the former WWE and Universal Champion, as I mentioned, has not appeared anywhere outside the company and has been keeping a low profile since his release, apart from several cryptic tweets. We have heard rumors about him possibly working with Hollywood producers, working on a TV show, possibly working on a movie. We don't really know. Now, when it comes to the asking price has actually been quite well known. That's not really revelatory news, as it were. We've known that Bray Wyatt's asked a high amount when it comes to his pro wrestling contract, and as he should. His last contract with WWE was very, very big, and like Braun Strowman, it came at the right time. Bray Wyatt's contract was expiring, I believe, in 2019. Now, that was just around the time that WWE had this huge influx of cash. They just signed their television rights deals with the likes of Fox and NBC Universal, the largest television deals they'd ever signed in the company history. They'd also then just signed the agreement with Saudi Arabia to partner for 10 years and do all of these events in Saudi Arabia for huge amounts of money. The stock price was at a record high. Because of that, WWE was very, very, very well off at that period of time. And because of that, they had all of this extra money. They were throwing big contracts at anyone on the roster, frankly, some that didn't really deserve it or weren't worth that much. And they were doing it also because they were afraid of the new upstart company AEW that they knew was well backed by the Khan family as well when it came to their financial backing. So because of that, they were offering people silly money just to stay at home. And obviously for their big stars, like Bray Wyatt, who at the time was red hot with the new Fiend character, they gave him a big amount of money. Fast forward a couple of years later, through the pandemic and through creative issues and through issues that maybe Wyatt was having with Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard, they decided they were going to let him go. But in Wyatt's mind, of course, he's still worth that previous contract that he was on. So when other companies, such as AEW, such as Impact Wrestling, such as whoever, reached out to him, he said, this is my price, this is the contract I was on, this is how much I'm worth. So obviously because of that, we haven't seen him in any pro wrestling company since. Do I expect to see him back in WWE? I do. I do expect to see him back, like we've seen a lot of these people return under Triple H. Triple H was, fairly complimentary about him. He admitted that with someone that creative, it can be somewhat difficult to work with at times, but said that he also really enjoyed working with him. Of course, Triple H was fundamental in bringing the initial Bray Wyatt character to prominence in the earliest version of NXT when they first moved to Full Sail University in 2012. So certainly, I expect Bray Wyatt or / The Fiend or whatever he has in his mind to return at some point, but it's actually a good idea that he doesn't return right now, to be honest, because there's a lot of other people that have been returning. There's been Braun Strowman, there's been Johnny Gargano, there's been Dexter Lumis, there's been Dakota Kai, there's been all of these other people that have returned. We saw the same issue in AEW, didn't we, last year, and we have seen it over the last 12 months. What happens when you have a return or a surprise every week? Eventually people stop caring. Eventually it's not a surprise because you expect the surprise. The best thing about The Fiend was the unexpected nature of the character, the dark character, something we hadn't really seen before. So it doesn't make sense to have The Fiend return in the same way that everyone else has returned. The best way for The Fiend to return is for it to be unexpected, is for it to be when nobody's expecting it or expecting it the least. So I expect Bray Wyatt to return. When will it be? It possibly could be Survivor Series, could be later. That could be Crown Jewel. Of course, he won the Universal Championship at Crown Jewel. We know a big match that's going to happen at that event. We'll talk about that shortly. Maybe that's the right time for him to return. Maybe it's Hell in a Cell. We had one of the worst matches in his WWE career against Seth Rollins. Maybe he returns then. So there's certainly plenty of opportunities, and it would appear that that deal isn't completely done yet, and maybe it's a bit more complex than the other deals. But I still firmly expect Bray Wyatt to return to WWE at some point. It's just a case of we'll have to wait and see when those negotiations and that contract is finalized, and most importantly, when is the right time, when is the best time to bring Bray Wyatt back. Let's talk about Logan Paul. We had that press conference yesterday that we spoke about briefly on yesterday's video, talking about Logan Paul's appearance on SmackDown, calling out Roman Reigns, that big press conference. We knew this match was going to be confirmed. We now actually know it is for the Undisputed Universal Championship as well, so it's official. Undisputed WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns will be defending his title against social media star Logan Paul at Crown Jewel. During yesterday's Las Vegas press conference, WWE Chief Content Officer Triple H made the match official for the Crown Jewel Premium Live event. Crown Jewel, of course, will be taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on November 5th. The event will be available to stream on Peacock for the US and the WWE Network for everyone else around the world, as well as being available on pay-per-view too. Now, of course, on this week's edition of SmackDown, Logan Paul called out Roman Reigns and asked him to meet him face-to-face at a press conference in Las Vegas. Of course, last month also, Reigns was a guest on Logan Paul's podcast Impulsive, and before the show ended, the popular YouTuber revealed he wanted to face Reigns in a match. Paul, of course, signed a WWE contract on June 30th. He recently wrestled at SummerSlam against The Miz, where he won the match by pinning The Miz with his own move, the skull-crushing finale. As noted at WrestleMania 38, he teamed with The Miz to go up against Rey and Dominic Mysterio. After they won the match, that's when The Miz turned on Paul, setting up their SummerSlam match. And look, Logan Paul's been incredibly impressive. He really has. And when asked at this event if we could see him possibly returning to the boxing ring, because of course he has had boxing fights against the likes of KSI, he's also had exhibition contests against the likes of Floyd Mayweather, he basically said we'll see. He said his main focus is on having this new match against Roman Reigns, and as for his return to boxing, that could happen at some point in the future. It must be said, I, like many people, I think it was some ridiculous number that was watching live. I think like 50,000 people were watching live at the time, and then factor in all of the people that probably viewed it after the fact. I thought the press conference was great. I thought it was a real nice change of pace, and I hope it's something that WWE is going to do more often. We saw them integrate the press conference after the Clash at the Castle event, and we have seen, obviously, AEW do their media scrums. Maybe they're not going to do their media scrums going forward, of how the What After All Out went with CM Punk and Tony Khan, but we have seen WWE incorporate press conferences more recently, and they used to in the past. They used to do press conferences for WrestleManias or certain big events. They used to have their press conferences, and they're different. They're different, and they always get you. I don't know what it is with press conferences. They always make you more interested, get you more hyped up, make you want to see the event more. And I thought everyone involved did a really good job. This could have been really cheesy. This could have been really, yeah, it's pro wrestling. Yeah, it's not real. Yeah, it's not serious. But everyone did a great job. Logan Paul did a great job of his promo. Michael Cole did a good job of hosting it. Triple H, of course, we know what his role is there, to hype everything up and make the official announcements. But Roman Reigns was there with the entire bloodline. And when I say the entire bloodline, I mean everyone. It was Roman Reigns, it was the Usos, it was Solo Sikoa, it was Paul Heyman, and it was also Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn's presence there was quite interesting because chances are he's not actually going to be at Crown Jewel because he hasn't participated in any of the Saudi shows because of his Syrian descent. So I doubt he's going to appear there. But, you know, coming out of it, for a match that, like I said, it doesn't bother me. I know that there's been a real sort of conflicting response to this on social media, with some people saying it's smart business and they look forward to it, and we've seen that Logan Paul can go in the ring, so it's not as if it's going to be a bad match. With some people that are, for whatever reason, really offended by it. It's only his third match and he's competing for the Undisputed Universal Championship. I get that, I understand that, but I feel like now this is more of a case of business outweighing logic in pro wrestling, and sometimes you have to go down that route, and that's clearly the route that they're going down in this instance. And I came out of it thinking everyone did a good job, and I'm excited to see it. It's a spectacle. That's the word that Triple H kept using over and over and over again in the press conference. It's a spectacle, and pro wrestling and WWE is about spectacle, and no doubt it's the car crash on the side of the road principle. People are going to tune in because they want to see what's going to happen. What on earth does WWE have planned for this? We know the outcome. There is no way in a million years. Could you imagine the uproar? Could you imagine the uproar if the guy who's been the world champion for over 700 days, he's been undefeated since, the end of 2019 or something ridiculous, he finally gets defeated and his title reign gets ended by, of all people, Logan Paul in his third match? Could you imagine if they did that, the outroar? So people are going to tune in to see. No way they'll do it, but also they'll tune in to see because they want to see, can they pull it off? And they can pull it off. We know they can pull it off. 100% they can pull it off, but how good is it going to be? And also as well, look, social media loves or hates Logan Paul, but they know exactly who he is, and he's got a huge following. And WWE, clearly, in just the two matches that Logan Paul's done, the one at WrestleMania and the one at SummerSlam, clearly they've seen not only is he capable in the ring, not only does he have the desire to do it, but also the traction that everything he does gets. They're not stupid when it comes to that. They've clearly seen that, for instance, what he did at SummerSlam, the reaction that got online, the reaction that got in terms of media, and they've seen, actually, what happens if we put him in the main event? What happens if we can actually see if we can sell an entire stadium out, putting him against a match against Roman Reigns? And of course, almost the best place really to do that is a stadium show that, no disrespect, doesn't really matter as much in Crown Jewel, but also the budget's the biggest out of any stadium show they do because of just the sheer finance that they have with that Saudi deal. So they can pay the big bucks to put Logan Paul in the main event against Roman Reigns. So, I thought the press conference was really well done. I hope WWE do more of it. I don't know if they're going to do it for every single premium live event. Logically, you would say they do it for the big events and also the stadium shows, which the next big one would be Survivor Series, and then they do one for the Royal Rumble, and then for WrestleMania, or possibly a Saudi show in between then as well. So I expect that to be the case, but you know, I'm not naive enough to say that I think Logan Paul's going to win. Clearly he's not, but it's spectacle, and I have no problem with spectacle. I've always said that about celebrity involvement. People get really upset and offended, and I think that really stems from people watching shoot interviews or people watching social media clips and assuming that they have to be offended, whether a celebrity or an athlete comes into WWE and takes a spot from the boys or whatever like that. It's just silly. It's silly. Logan Paul would do a fantastic job. I have no doubt about that. So if you haven't watched the press conference, go and watch it. It's very, very good. Let's talk about the preliminary ratings of SmackDown, of course, of which Logan Paul did appear on that show. Spoiler TV has reported on the September 16 episode of SmackDown that it drew 2.086 million viewers in preliminary viewership. Of course, these are prelim numbers, so these could go up or down slightly. Hour 1 reportedly scored 2.070 million viewers, while the second hour drew 2.102 million viewers. This week's preliminary numbers are down from last week's episode, which scored 2.217 million viewers per prelim numbers, and the final viewership count was 2.367 million viewers. Now, Friday's episode recorded a preliminary rating of 0.45 in the 18 to 49 demographic, down from last week's 0.5. As I mentioned, these are prelim numbers, so it will be interesting. Of course, it's going to be interesting as well what the final numbers always are, but also it's going to be interesting to see, as I just mentioned, about Logan Paul and the news that kind of was breaking prior to SmackDown. Did that or didn't that have a big influence on the numbers? Because, of course, Raw's been doing very well recently. This week, of course, Monday nights it struggled because of the return of Monday Night Football and also the Emmys. But it'll be interesting to see, did Logan Paul's involvement, did Roman Reigns' lack of involvement, how did that impact the numbers this week for SmackDown? So once we get those numbers, of course, we'll talk about it here on the channel. A bit of a corporate shake-up in WWE as well recently. In the ever-changing WWE landscape, there has been some more business shake-ups. According to documents filed by the company with SEC, 2 new members of WWE's board of directors have been elected, while another is on their way out, according to the document filed with the United States government. According to a press release, new board members Michelle McKenna and Joellen Lyons Dillon were elected to the board. In the SEC filing, WWE declared that CEO of Barstool Sports, Erika Nardini, had resigned from WWE's board of directors. Whilst this might sound like a big story, it might sound like something salacious, the filing provides a reasonable rationale for the change, noting a major shift since the acquisition of Barstool Sports, writing, quote, concurrent with the election of Mrs. Dillon and McKenna, Erika Ayers Nardini has resigned from the board. With the recent acquisition of Barstool Sports by Penn Entertainment, Ms. Ayers Nardini's time will be focused on the next chapter of this business and partnership. Ms. Ayers Nardini's decision to resign from the board was not due to any dispute or disagreement with its management or matter relating to operations, policies, and practices. So, whilst you might think, oh, and sometimes the headlines say, oh, someone's leaving the board of directors, especially in recent months, of course, of all the salacious stuff that has been going on with WWE, you're not blamed for thinking that something salacious could have happened. It hasn't. But also, WWE has made some other changes when it comes to their marketing department as well. According to Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics, WWE has made layoffs in the marketing department on this past week, on Friday, actually. Thurston adds that multiple people at the vice president level were let go from the company. WWE hired Catherine Newman as executive vice president and head of marketing in June. She most recently served as chief marketing officer of Manchester United's social media, but we don't know what's going on with that now. But there have been significant layoffs in the marketing department there. So, of course, if we get more details about that, of course, we'll speak about it on the channel too. Finally, we have an injury to one of the tag team competitors on SmackDown. A WWE star has been announced of being out of action indefinitely due to an injury. Now, during the Fatal 4-Way match to determine who would be the next number 1 contenders to the Undisputed Tag Team Championships this week on SmackDown, WWE made an announcement about an injury. Michael Cole on commentary noted that the Viking Raiders were not in the match because of Eric of the Viking Raiders suffering an injury to his foot and would be out of action for an indefinite period of time. Of course, the Viking Raiders recently have been feuding with the New Day, leading up to their special-themed Viking Rules match on the pre-taped edition of SmackDown that aired in advance of Clash at the Castle. The tag team match went on, pitting the New Day against Imperium, the Brawling Brutes, and Hit Row to determine who would face the Usos for the championships. Of course, we know that Butch and Ridge Holland won the match and will challenge for the tag team titles next week on SmackDown. And it is unfortunate for the Viking Raiders because it felt like they were getting somewhat of a push, a bit of a change there to their characters, and they were feuding with the New Day, of course, big tag team. But unfortunately, it appears that Eric is injured, and we don't know how severe it is, how bad the injury is, or when he'll be back. So, of course, if we get any updates about that, we'll talk about that here on the channel too. So there you go, guys. That's the latest WWE news stories. Let us know your thoughts on today's news stories in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.